Sunny Day Real Estate burst onto the scene with the release of 1994's now iconic record, Diary. Though there were bands from the 80s, such as Rites of Spring, that essentially invented what we now know as emo, Sunny Day Real Estate brought it to the mainstream and gave it its alternative twist. They did many things right, with Jeremy Ennick's sensitive vocals, William Goldsmith's hard-hitting drums, and Dan Horner's many memorable riffs. With a discography of 4 records, I go into how Sunny Day Real Estate made emo into what it is today, with later albums completely transcending that label. Let's begin with the album that started it all, the modern classic, Diary. In 1992, guitarist Dan Horner and bassist Nate Mendel became housemates and formed a rock band. Shortly after, they picked up drummer William Goldsmith. Initially, Dan Horner was the singer of the group, but his voice was rough and hardcore-centered. Along came Jeremy Ennick, Goldsmith's high school friend. His softer, more introspective approach to his vocals suited the vision better, so he permanently became the lead vocalist. Recording for the first album began in November 1993 and wrapped shortly after. On May 10, 1994, the album was officially released on Sub Pop Records. It was produced by Brad Wood and spawned 2 singles in the form of Seven and In Circles. In a time of grunge being at its peak, Sunny Day Real Estate were truly doing something different. Jeremy Ennick's vocal delivery on Diary is something that needs to be listened to. It fits the music so well. It's soft and is a nice counter to the punchy guitars. I guess in this case, opposites attract. The choruses on these songs are undeniably catchy and sound simple, but there's so much going on here. Goldsmith's drumming is consistently amazing, with a lot of cool drum fills. He keeps the rhythm of the music going so tightly and efficiently. The guitars range from a beautiful melody to a powerhouse of grit and distortion. The production here is so well done. The guitar is crunchy and raw. You can really feel the instruments. Just about every track on Diary is incredible. In Circles is in your face and intense, constantly going from quiet to loud in a matter of seconds. The Blankets Were the Stairs is eerie and slow building, before exploding into one of the best choruses on the record. It's like being locked in a room and you can't find the key. It's claustrophobic and able to convey its feeling through the instrumentals and Jeremy's vocals of desperation. The closer, Sometimes, is the breaking point, the culmination of all the emotion felt on Diary that plays out as this slow-building, alternative masterpiece that grips you until the very end. This is a landmark record for rock music, and I don't think many would argue. Diary has been said to be a defining emo record that has influenced countless bands, and it's true. If it weren't for Diary, we might have never had bands like Taking Back Sunday or Jimmy Eat World, which repopularized emo in the 2000s. Unfortunately, as soon as Sunny Day Real Estate took off, relationships were rocky within the band. After the release of Diary, the band was asked to perform at radio station KROQ in California. However, Dan Horner refused to play the concert, leaving the rest of the band to perform as a 3-piece. Also, during this time, Jeremy Ennick became a born-again Christian. These events are likely the reasons for their breakup shortly after. During the making of their second album, the band officially broke up in early 1995. Later that year, Sub Pop released their self-titled album on November 7th. The band's second album wasn't even fully finished when it was released. Jeremy Ennick has gone on to admit a lot of the songs have no real lyrics, and he just sang gibberish to finish the recording faster. The tension was obviously incredibly high. The band didn't care to title nor give the record artwork. So what did we get with their second album? Was it as good as Diary? Well, to put it shortly, no. Sunny Day Real Estate's Self-Titled is still a great record, very much reminiscent of Diary, but it's basically unfinished, and especially knowing the background, puts a bit of a bad taste in your mouth. It still keeps the iconic emo sound of earlier works, but done a bit differently. The production is a tad more uneven, and it doesn't flow like Diary, but it's still solid all things considered. There's plenty of memorable moments, including the classic riffs and the energy throughout. For an album the band didn't really care about, it's surprisingly really good, and I can confidently say there's not a single bad song here. Friday is a great opener. It's catchy and emotive. Jeremy's vocal melody is amazing, and I love the guitar work here. Red Elephant is one of their best songs and could have easily fit on Diary. It's dramatic and powerful, just one of those songs you can listen to again and again. 5/4 is another highlight, one of the more subdued cuts while being incredibly memorable. The musicianship is simple but tighter than ever. At this point, the band had exhausted their signature emo sound. This is an album that is interesting in the sense that afterward, Sunny Day Real Estate pretty much became a different band. In following releases, the fragile, emo sound they nailed down so well was mostly abandoned for a more experimental, almost prog rock sound. But it would take 3 years for this to happen, as the band didn't reform until 1997. When they returned to record a few new songs, they got back into their groove and made it official. But the music they'd come to release next would be different, hardly comparable to previous efforts. This record isn't totally alien to their original sound, but it is certainly a lot more experimental and ambient than previous releases. Lineup changes may have contributed to this minor sound change. A lot of these songs drone, taking time to have their full effect on you. A way this record differs is some of the songs have a positive inflection, a rather upbeat instrumental. This may have something to do with Enoch's conversion to Christianity. These songs sound a lot more soulful and spiritual, rather than the bleak depression of Diary. Every Shining Time You Arrive is a great example. It's so gorgeously arranged with a very melodically uplifting soundscape. Guitar in video games starts off sounding similar to Diary, with its emotive guitar riff before breaking off into a thick wall of sound. There's something majestic about this record. It's an entirely unique experience to everyone who listens to it. I don't think I like it as much as prior albums, but it is very much worth your time. It's artistic and anthemic. In technical terms, Jeremy Enoch has drastically improved in the vocal department. How It Feels to Be Something On is an impressive outing, full of fantastic fade-ins and fade-outs. This is the record that made people realize Sunny Day Real Estate had more to their sound. There's genuine conviction and attention to detail here. But even with the shift of their sound to a more refined, mature style, their emo labeling was still attached eternally. In a way, the band deserves a lot more than an emo legacy, but it was honestly inevitable. After all, the band released a quintessential emo record. Emo is about emotion in your music, and Sunny Day Real Estate certainly fit that description. They spearheaded a movement, a really amazing feat. That much can't be ignored. After the release of How It Feels to Be Something On, the band was out of their contract with Sub Pop, and began the search for a new label. Skeptical, the band opted not to sign with a major label, but rather an independent label, Time Bomb Recordings. Their next record would be their final, for reasons you might be surprised to hear. Let's talk about The Rising Tide, Sunny Day Real Estate's final album. The Rising Tide, released on June 20th, 2000, marks the second to last time we've heard new material from Sunny Day Real Estate. So what does this record sound like? It's quite different than the sound most have come to know the band for. This is a release with prog written all over it. A lot of these riffs and song structures are completely out of the emo lane the band was once in. The Rising Tide is a grandiose experience, certainly with a lot of thought put into the craft. There's an atmosphere here that gets you invested. It's a very spiritually reaching project, with existentialist themes referencing angels, oceans, and more subjects that make this a mature, insightful listen. Along with the lyrical themes, instrumentally these songs sound bigger than life, almost therapeutic. They essentially take on lives of their own. Opener, Killed by an Angel, has a heavy guitar riff and sounds similar to past albums. One is a great cut too. Both of these songs are powerful and thought-provoking. Rain Song is a saccharine-sounding acoustic track with piano and an immediately sticky vocal melody. Tearing in My Heart has an odd intro, but the actual tune is heartfelt and sincere, being one of my favorites here. The guitars are still pounding, and this record isn't a huge departure from earlier works, but it's different for sure. More than anything, this release has an outlook and stylistic change, rather than a major sound change. The band's root sound is still here, just done in a slightly proggy fashion, and there's nothing wrong with changing your formula. After a while, the same thing would get boring, so I respect Sunny Day Real Estate immensely for being able to effectively progress their sound in a way that wouldn't totally confuse fans. The biggest difference on this album is its themes. Diary was more self-loathing, relatable, and surface level, whereas The Rising Tide takes on more existentialist themes. I still prefer Diary, but that's simply my personal preference. A really solid final album for a band that never got their due. being one of the most original musical acts of the 1990s. Following the release came a US tour. The band was excited to keep going, and even intended on touring overseas to promote the album. Unfortunately, their label, Time Bomb Recordings, put a lot of money into supporting a Peter Searcy album, which totally bombed. The label went bankrupt and that was the end. With the bad news, the band simply decided it'd be easier to just call it quits. In the years following their breakup, the emo label has still followed their name. I'm very mixed on that, but it can't be denied that they were pioneers of emo in the 1990s. Diary and LP2 are full to the brim of classic emo tunes you can jam out to like Henrietta and South Park. Even though How It Feels to Be Something On and The Rising Tide aren't totally emo style-wise, the emotion never left, and thus, it's safe to say the band have an emo legacy. The band briefly reformed in 2009 and went on a reunion tour with intentions of making a new album that never came to fruition. However, in the midst of members not getting along, in 2014 the band released a 7-inch split single with Circa Survive. Their one and only new song since 2000 came in the form of Lipton Witch. It's a fast-tempo, amazing rock tune that calls back to their early days. Enoch's voice still sounds great. It's such a shame that this may very well be Sunny Day Real Estate's last song ever. Nonetheless, we as fans are just glad we got as much material from the band as we did, knowing their internal issues. Jeremy Enoch has gone on to pursue his solo career, and formed another group called the Fire Theft with Nate Mendel and William Goldsmith. Goldsmith, along with Mendel, also joined the Foo Fighters for varying periods of time. Lastly, Dan Horner actually became an author and scored a short film called Someone and Someone Incorporated. Sunny Day Real Estate are remembered for their embrace of emotive rock music. Though their first 2 records paved the way for future emo bands, their final 2 records carved a different path, and that is incredibly respectable. This change showed the band's true talent and versatility as musicians and songwriters. While the band are mostly known as emo legends, they're more than that. Sure, they revolutionized an entire subgenre, but there's truly a lot more to dissect in their sound than just that. This is a band that could suddenly shift their style and still be just as good. At the end of the day, just know they had tons to offer, and really had an array of sounds that could please fans of any type of rock music. A unique case in music history. A band too disillusioned to continue into the new millennium, not realizing just how influential they were. Maybe for them, it was just a phase in their lives. But for music fans alike, their countless classic tunes continue to be powerful and potent, going into yet another decade, regardless of their genre. Which album by the band is your favorite? Leave a comment down below. Discussion is always encouraged. Thanks for watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. It truly goes a long way. More music-related content coming soon here on The Music Narrative.